Internally in the US economy, it's clearly on its recession path, if it's not already in recession. You can see it in the consumer confidence surveys. You can see it in how rapidly unemployment is rising. And probably the unemployment rate is going to accelerate over the next few months. Just everything you look at, including the time bombs sitting within the financial system that really could explode and probably will start exploding before early next year. As an example, the KBW Bank Index is currently at 103. By year end, our technical associate has it at 65. By the end of next year, at 45. That's not telling you a robust system at all. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, if we're honest and put the correct dots together, ever since sometime in the second half of 2023, NATO started making plans to attack Russia. And we can see it in how NATO has deployed masses of troops into countries surrounding Russia, as well as equipment, including missiles. What we're now seeing with the invasion of Kursk is that the planned attack, in our view, has really started. And what you can see happening is that NATO, using Ukraine as the stepping stone, have actually been targeting Russian oil refineries and depots. In the last 36 hours or so, 2 have been destroyed. But in recent weeks, I think the figure is, up until the last 36 hours, was a total of 6. What's the objective? Twofold. One, to provoke Russia into making the first attack on NATO, or 2, to deprive Russia of the juice to fight a war. So when I look around things, this is not a perfect world, and markets are pricing in a perfect world. It's anything but perfect. And I fear that before the end of this year, even maybe before the end of this month, that we are going to see the war largely confined to within Ukraine's borders, moving out of those borders. Russia's first attack is confined to Ukraine. And after the invasion into Kursk and the bombings that have been taking place, also right across middle Russia's towns and cities, Russia now is intent, from what I piece together, in just actually destroying Ukraine and leveling it to dust. That, I think, that's Russia's response. Gloves are off. And what it means also is those NATO command and control bunkers that have not yet been destroyed will be destroyed also. Don't forget that in the invasion of Kursk, there were a number of NATO troops, particularly from France, Poland, America. I'm not so sure about the UK, but also NATO equipment, plus the satellite imagery. So it is a war. According to some experts, the possibility that Russia will actually use a small tactical nuclear missile to destroy all of the Ukraine/NATO's troops and equipment that are in the Kursk Oblast region. They've already relocated, last count I saw was 200,000 inhabitants, and it's not a well-populated region. So the idea is they do that, and then they say, any more attacks in Russia, this is what you're going to get. But given the fact that for decades, the primary objective of a certain group in Washington, go back to Brzezinski's years, has been to dismember Russia to gain control of its huge natural resources. Ukraine always was conceived back in 2014 as the stepping stone into Russia. So having got this far, I think it is very likely that they will continue with that objective, having got this far. I'm just amazed that the global markets are just not even looking beyond their noses and their eyes. We actually see global equity markets falling by anything from 25 to 40% between now and early next year. That obviously includes base metals as well. The converse of that is gold will at least stay at these levels and will probably rise. I think we are in the early stages of a long-term bull market in gold. Gold reflects financial and political tensions. For the last, 40-odd years, markets put their faith into government bonds. I think the next 40 years, people won't want them. The silver is a trading unit and probably in the short term outperforms gold. But gold is your security because gold is coming back into the monetary system. What is the BRICS currency going to be? It's going to be 40% gold, so I hear, 60% local currencies, but they will all be linked into gold. Mm-hmm. It won't be long before China will announce that our currency is supported by the gold which our citizens own, which is around 25,000 tons, which is what has been taken out of the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Mm-hmm. The same in Russia. Russia's total gold is north of 12,000 tons. I think short term, Washington will do everything they can, primarily through the derivative markets, to stop the price of oil going up for obvious reasons. But when I look at the situation in the Middle East, I think by the end of next year, oil will be at $150, $200. Why do I say that? First of all, if NATO continues to destroy Russia's refineries, how much is Russia going to export? Then, if Netanyahu gets what he wants, which is an attack on Iran, Iran will respond and has told America as such. If we are attacked, we will destroy the oil fields in the region. I think that America cannot afford to keep such a large fleet in the Eastern Mediterranean for long. Netanyahu's timescale is pretty limited. How much longer can he hold back the internal pressures for his removal? So you can put a case up that within a matter, and this is not a forecast, by the way, you can put a case up that within a matter of months, we will get war in the Middle East. Where does it start from? The military guys say it should start by taking out Hezbollah, and then you go to Iran. Others say, no, you go to the head of the snake first, which is Iran. So all I'm saying is that there is a high risk that the war will become regional within 2 years. May not be immediate, but within 2 years. Food is going to be in short supply, and the prices of food next year are going to soar. My advice to everybody for many months has been stockpile food. I think A, prices, and B, it ain't going to be there. Why won't it be there? The weather conditions, supply chains, oil prices, transport costs. Let's get out of the big cities into a rural community. Make sure you've got plenty of food. Make sure you've got water supply. A backup are these little generating sets that are powered by folding solar panels, which I think are going to be an absolute necessity. I think all one can say is that the outlook for the next 3 to 5 years is going to be extremely volatile. It's not a time to invest, it's a time to trade, and it's a time to build up your cash and other resources centered on gold and food and survival. If Trump gets into the White House, then there will be a deal with Putin. But I think before the election, Putin will have basically destroyed Ukraine, which has a different connotation to it, because several of the American and European mega financial institutions have lent money against what they perceived as being a $4 trillion asset in the Ukraine. What happens if that $4 trillion asset is no longer there? My personal view is that at the end of the day, Ukraine becomes a state of Russia, all of it. That was not the original planning at all. But I think there's no trust at all between Russia and the West. So as a defensive measure, my own view is that they will need to take the whole of Ukraine and thus deprive America of the assets that it wanted to get its fingers on in Ukraine. There has been no agreement between China and America over Ukraine. That rather implies to me there's no meeting of the minds between America and China over Taiwan and that region. Look at the build-up of tensions between China and the Philippines, which the Philippines is basically controlled is too strong a word, but influenced by Washington. Look at how America has been signing these strategic military alliances with Australia, Japan, South Korea, probably the Philippines, I don't know. They are building a structure that surrounds China. But look at what Putin has done with North Korea. Signed very, very important strategic alliances and placed an ICBM in North Korea, as though to say to America, we're watching you. It's really up to America. If America wants to cross the final red line of China's, which is to place in Taiwan offensive military equipment and personnel, then I think that China is forced to respond and will probably respond by a blockade. The longer-term problem is that Washington sees China as its competitor. And even in the bigger picture, Washington wrote BRICS off as a nonentity in the early days. But now seeing how BRICS is maturing and growing and is in an advanced stage of creating their own currency, which will not use the US dollar, they've got very worried, because if BRICS continues to mature and become a real entity, then it's the beginning of the end of America's global hegemony. So I think that all these things are bound up into one word, war. Nearly every empire in history ended by trying to keep their hegemony by brute force, war, and all failed. The one that sensibly lost its empire by diplomacy was Britain. If Trump gets into the White House, then there is a real chance of sane heads going down the diplomatic route and negotiating an agreement without having to go into a mega war.